Hi guys, Zero here for another Kamen Rider vlog review, and today we're going to be talking about Kamen Rider Blade. And yes, I have the DX Kamen Rider Blade driver. More on that when I get to Henshin time. Alright, Kamen Rider Blade. I've actually spoken a lot about this series, and it's the series that's taken me a journey of over 2 years to complete. And the reason is, well, I started it originally and then stopped. I got back into it and then stopped again, and then more recently I decided to finish it so I could finish what I started. There's a reason for it, and it's because of the story, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But first off, let's talk about the plot of Kamen Rider Blade. The initial plot is the undead have been accidentally revived, and Board, by Board, the company who had the cards for the undead, because undead are sealed in cards, and now they've created Kamen Rider belts so they can seal the undead, because that's the only way they know how. And they actually use the undead cards for their transformations too, so this is Blade's change card. So the Riders exist to stop the undead from attacking people and seal them into, again, cards. So that's the basic premise of the show. Here's where things get a little interesting. So, first off, let's talk about Kenzaki, who is Kamen Rider Blade. And I use a wiki, not to read information off of, but to remember to list all the characters and whatnot, because I forget names easy, they're Japanese names and whatnot. But there's barely any information written for Kenzaki, and that's because the show isn't even about him till way later on. This was a problem that was in Fies as well, but not nearly as big of a problem as it is in here, and we'll get to that. Anyways, Kenzaki, his job is to be a Kamen Rider and to seal the undeads, and yeah, cards again. So, okay, so that's his job, and he also has, his rider is the spade. So his sign is the spade. And he uses a sword, Kamen Rider Blade. Yeah. He is joined by fellow co-worker and friend Tachibana, who is Kamen Rider Garen. And he's the diamond. The rider with diamonds. And he uses a gun instead of a sword. And a lot of the first half of the series is about him. So I'm going to be talking a lot about Tachibana. I mean, the start of the series starts off, it's all about him, his love, interest, he's getting weaker as a rider, he wants to be stronger so he could take on the undeads. He gets duped, 3 times throughout the show. I don't know why he keeps trusting people that don't seem very trustworthy, but he does. And as a character, Tachibana is a hard character to talk about because, on one hand, he's an asshole, but on the other hand, he keeps getting conned by people, but he doesn't learn from his mistakes. He just keeps getting conned, so he's kind of a weak character. He's also one of the weaker riders because he doesn't have any special upgrade. Well, he does, but it only puts him on the same level of power as the other riders. So, as a couple of the other riders. So, or one other, whatever. I'll get into that. So there's Shiori, who is her father worked for Board, and she also worked for Board, and she escaped with a computer with the Board software to track the undeads, and she's basically the main support for Kenzaki when he goes to find undeads to fight. So, yeah. And then there's Karasuma, who is the one who created the rider systems, Blade and Garen, and the I always have trouble pronouncing this. Liang, whatever, driver, which is the driver for the clubs, or the Clover. Clover Clubs, whatever. That's the driver for that. And that goes to Mutsuki. And Mutsuki is a troubled kid who finds himself the driver and a sealed ace card, which actually he can't fully control, so it sort of changes his personality and makes him obsessed with being the most powerful for most of the show. So he's sort of just like a kid who can't control his own power, sort of thing. He's just like a high school kid or whatever. So he's Kamen Rider Legend or Legend or whatever, and he becomes the main focus of the show too, and he has his own plot point near the start of the series, and it intertwines with Tachibana. So there's also Hajime. Hajime is his driver's different than the other ones. It wasn't created by Board. It's one that he just happens to have. I forget exactly how he gets it. Basically, he is an undead, and in fact, he's one of the most important to the whole undead battle, because the whole thing with the undead is it's a giant battle, and the winner at the end gets to decide what they want. They can take over the world, they can choose what species are on the world, create harmony, whatever. But in Hajime's case, he doesn't get a choice. There's only one option if he wins the battle of the undead, and that's to destroy that's to make a world for undead only. So essentially, Hajime, he is Kamen Rider Chalice, which is a really cool name for a Kamen Rider, and he's the Hearts Kamen Rider. It goes to that whole playing cards theme, and he has to use a card to go back to his human form because he's an undead. He's not fully human. So, and he has a very significant part of the whole story as well. And then there's minor characters like Kotaro, who is he's an aspiring writer, a journalist, and he basically, Kenzaki and Shiori live at his house while they're trying to get the undeads. Then there's the people at the cafe, Haruka and Amane. Haruka's the owner of the cafe and the mother. Amane is her daughter and is obsessed with Hajime. So that happens. So a lot of stuff happens with that. There's also minor characters, like there's undeads later on that actually don't want to fight but want to do stuff. There's a queen, and I think there's also an ace. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. As you can see, there's a lot of characters, and I'm barely talking about Kenzaki because, again, his story doesn't become important until way later. And this is the main problem with the show. There's so many characters and there's so many storylines going on at once that you just get fucking story whiplash because it very quickly changes between. It seems like the first 15 episodes are all about Tachibana, and then there's some about Mutsuki, and then some about Chalice or Hajime, and it's just all mixed around, and there's no throughout plot. Again, Kenzaki doesn't become part of the plot until at least after episode 30. This is a 48 episode series, and the main writer isn't part of the main story until after episode 30. Do you know how ridiculous that is? Now, Faiz did this as well, but Faiz's defense, its overarching story with all the characters was a much bigger issue than who is Kamen Rider Faiz. In this story, there's so many different issues going on, and they don't connect either. They do eventually, but they don't connect initially. So it's literally this character story arc, then this character story arc, then this character story arc. Normally, in a long-standing anime or something like that, or a long-standing series, this would make coherent sense. But in Kamen Rider, first of all, a kid's show, tokusatsu show, and a superhero show, this is not good. This is bad story structure, and it really takes you out of the show. I quit the first time the show because I didn't have enough time to keep watching the show. I wanted to, but I do the Tokusatsu Corner, as you guys know, and I have a lot of other things that I have to do. So I had to watch a bunch of other shows, and I couldn't keep going. So I had to do that. And the second time was just before it gets to be about Kanzaki. I gave up on the show because I was like, okay, I am not invested in this story at all, because I don't know because there's so many character storylines going on at the same time. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't get it. It was like, so I didn't pick it up again for like at least a year and a half. So I went and watched Vice, and I thought, you know what? Blade is next. I'm going to finish what I started and finish Blade. And I did. And you know what? It has a really good ending. But the problem is, the story is just so messed up that I don't know, like, if I consider the show good or not. Story-wise, I can't consider it a good show. I like the suits, I like the battles, I like the upgrades, the weapons, all that stuff is great. But the storyline itself is just messed up. And I think this is why they stopped doing storylines so seriously. I think the next one, I think they still did it, but they improved. By the time they got to Kabuto, they had improved the story, how to do their storylines. And then by Den-O, they just threw all that out and made it a wacky comedy. But Blade definitely shows where its problems are. I can't call it a good show or a bad show, because it does have its good moments, but it's hard to recommend as a Kamen Rider show for you to watch. Also, like, if you're going to buy one of these, I'll just say this now, if you're going to buy a driver, don't buy this one. It does one function. Get Chalice's if you can get it, because Chalice's actually does a ton of functions. It has a card scanner, so you can use these actually on it. The only reason I mainly got this driver is to get the cards, which I thought I could use in the Decay driver, but they don't work. So my final thoughts on Kamen Rider Blade is it was an interesting show with a really good ending, like the level of Kamen Rider O's level of bittersweet ending sort of thing, but as a show as a whole, it is not what I would consider one of the better Kamen Rider seasons. And I think that's why not many people talk about it, because I don't think that many people have even finished Blade. So I struggled to finish it. Again, I really wanted to like this show. I really wanted to like Blade, because there's so much to like about it, but there's also just as much to criticize with it. And I think that's what the problem is. It's just, the show is either painfully average or not very good. So take with that what you will. If you want to watch Blade, there are other series to watch before it. That's all I'm going to say. Next time, hopefully I'll get to the movie. We'll see. I'm not sure. Thanks for watching my review. And I'm sorry to all the Kamen Rider fans are going to be upset that I didn't like Blade that much. But you know what? It has its good moments, and I'll give it that. But as a show as a whole, it's not very good. I'm sorry. Anyways, see you next time.